I'm from Mexico City, so if my English turns a bit rusty or something, please feel free to help me in the chat. But I'll do my best. I'm a philosopher and I specialized in environmental ethics, but we'll talk about that a little bit more through the course. And it's 3 hours long. That I know it sounds like a lot, but I swear that if you dive into it from the start, it'll pass like super quickly. Even sometimes, like when I give this workshop at the end, people still want to discuss and we even stay up for 5 hours. Which is not going to be the case today, but I'm just saying that because don't worry, I know it's early. Well, at least for me, it's 8 a.m. I think if someone is from San Diego, it's probably like 6 a.m. So thank you so much for being here wherever you are. And I really hope you enjoy this session, which is probably a bit different of what you've already been seeing in the festival or what you're used to. I hope it's different in a good way. That's kind of like my first disclaimer before we officially start, that this is a different workshop because we're not going to focus as much in the big problems. We're going to see them, like everything that's going on for the climate crisis, but it's more about finding meaning within, right? So it's more like, instead of seeing just like the big picture that sometimes feels so overwhelming, we're going to focus on trying to do from where we stand different things that can change our perspective and ultimately the world, right? So if Anna is okay, we can start.
Yeah, for sure. I think we can go ahead. I'm going to make you co-host in case you want to share your screen.
Yes, please. I'm going to share it.
Yeah, and in case if people join as we go, I'll just allow them to join.
Okay, so please tell me if you can see my screen. Yes?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So, like Anna said, I am Jimena. I have founded Zero Waste Mexico. We're going to talk about zero waste through the workshop, but I want to make the first emphasis in this second disclaimer that this is the whole message in our company is giving these messages and having these workshops through a positive look. I mean, sometimes the climate crisis and everything that surrounds it is very negative, and I have the feeling that because because of its negativity, we sometimes feel, like we can't do anything about it. Maybe we're in denial, maybe we're paralyzed. So what we're trying to do in Zero Waste Mexico is trying to change the way that we talk about these issues into a positive one, which I know sounds weird because what can be positive about this, but I think there are positive things. So keep that in mind through the rest of the workshop, like trying to keep a positive outlook to create a positive change, right? So now to officially start, I start with this quote that maybe you have seen. It's eventually everything connects. The first time I saw this, it was probably on Tumblr or Pinterest or something like that. I was like 14 years old and it was like super deep for some reason. I wasn't sure why it was so deep, but I found it super deep and inspiring. So I wrote it in a little paper and I put it in top of my desk in my house. So I had that phrase, I was constantly seeing that phrase, but I didn't really, like get into what it really meant. But it was there just in my room waiting for me for the right moment. So now, before I talk to how I found the right moment to understand this phrase, you have probably seen this before, or the idea before. The idea goes back even as far as Greek philosophy. And it's this idea that there's a moment in your life when you reflect and go back and realize things that happened to you, or like moments in particular that have shaped your path. And maybe in that moment, you weren't aware that I was going to change your path or give it a different meaning. But then when you look back, you go like, oh yeah, this happened to me for a reason. This is why I am like this now, or this is why my life is like this now. So, for example, Steve Jobs used this idea a lot in his presentations, like connecting the dots, he used to call it. So let's go with that, connecting the dots for me, like how I got here. because I feel like right now we're so distant, like from a computer, and to create a bridge between what I say and what you hear and create understanding, there has to be like a connection, right? So for that connection, I'm going to start with my story, these points in my life that connected, how I got here, like literally here talking to you. So the first dot that I realized changed my path was my problems with authority. That I know sounds weird, don't think authority like the law or something like that. It's like the authorities that you have when you're a kid, your parents, your teachers, in my case, my soccer practice coaches, and so on. So I got in a lot of trouble all the time just because I asked questions. So I did very well in school. I was actually like well behaved, but I asked too many questions. And apparently, a lot of these authorities didn't like kids asking questions. And especially if you're a girl, well, even worse, you can't be asking so many questions. So I was in my um, Catholic courses that I was taking, and I was making so many questions to the teachers. And I was like making the other students ask so many questions as well. So they maybe it's not just that they didn't have the answers, but they thought it was like an attitude problem. So well, they told my mom, Jimena can't be here anymore. So they like very nicely told my mom, you know, we are not going to let Jimena in for the next semester. So by Catholic school. And for my soccer practice coaches, well, I was very angry that we didn't have the same opportunities as the boys. So, you know, here in Mexico, soccer is like a big deal, right? So in school, we all had this soccer court in the middle of the school. And every day, boys were allowed to play in the court, and girls were only allowed to play on Wednesdays. But if in Wednesday morning before recess, the boys, you know, got together and organized whatever, they could take our like privilege for the court and play soccer instead of us. And it was totally okay. It was just like the rules of my school. So each Wednesday that happened, I like got into a fight. Like, why is this happening? This is our time. This is our court. We only have one day. So I even remember going to my dad and telling him, this is so unfair. Like, I want to play soccer as well. Why can't I play? And my dad was like, well, you know, it's more of a guy thing. Why don't you just go and, you know, do other things with your friends? So it's not that my dad was mean, but he was in the same idea. Like, you know, well, it's the rules. So I went to my teacher saying, it's the rules. Sorry, that's the way it's been. So I got in a lot of trouble because of asking all of these questions, because I didn't like the apparent answers that they gave me. Like they give children, like, oh, it's just like that because it's always been like that, because I'm your mom, because I'm your dad, because those are the rules, because whatever. So those answers for me were not answers, they were excuses, and I got even more frustrated and led me nowhere. So what that made me is that they gave me a label growing up. So they said I was a rebel, that I didn't have, that I didn't care for authority, or that I didn't respect authority. I wasn't mean, I wasn't rude or anything. I was just asking questions. But they gave me this label right from the start of my childhood. My parents, my teachers, and all of the authorities surrounding my childhood, they'd say, Jimena is a rebel. And what happens with labels is that when you grow up, you believe them. And right now, looking back, I'm glad they gave me that label. At first, I was a very angry child, a very angry teenager, frustrated with the world, with what I thought were injustices. Is that a word? But then I realized I'm happy that they gave me that label, because it changed my path and it made me feel very connected to things that were happening around me, and being very conscious about them. So the second point, before we go back into that one about my life, is my very deep connection with animals. So even from when I was little, maybe my mom, if you knew her, could tell you this is true. I loved trying to rescue dogs and cats and animals from the street. And like I wanted to have all of these animals in my house and feed them and nurture them and take care of them. But of course you can't do that, so I got in trouble for those things as well. But I really, really liked animals, and I really liked being in nature, and I think that's something that we can all relate to. Most kids, or I might say all kids, if we're allowed, love being in nature. We don't mind to get wet if it's raining. We don't mind getting dirty if it's with mud. I even made like mud cakes with my sister, I remember. So we don't care about those things. We don't care about touching animals, grabbing bugs, all of those things that when we grow up, we stop doing. Because imagine if you're like 30 years old and you keep on like dancing in the rain and don't mind getting dirty and grabbing the bugs, everyone will think you're weird. So we stop doing those things. But when we're kids, we're allowed. So I used to really, really like and enjoy my time outdoors. Sadly, like I said, over time, I had to kind of like leave that side, that face behind, to be a grown up. And then the third and last is my like for storytelling. I was so into storytelling and literature as a teenager that I was very sure that I was going to study cinema. I actually tried in one of the best schools here in Mexico City. I was sure I was going to study cinema, but I realized, you say that when you're like 15 or 14, but then when you're 17 and 18, that you actually have to make the decision. I realized, maybe what I like is storytelling. Maybe I like seeing things from different perspectives. Maybe I just like art. I don't know if it's cinema. I was having all of this crisis. So the thing that happened that made me realize all this that I'm telling you is that when I was 16 or 17, here in Mexico, in the last year of your high school, you have to choose like an area where you want to like specialize, and they help you find this area then, which will help you choose your what you're going to study in university. So it's called like first area uno, two, three, and four. No, so area one is like sciencey, and area four, which is the one that I chose, was like humanities oriented. So I thought, maybe that's kind of like my thing, I guess. So I went into that. And then I had my first philosophy class, and it changed my life. Like literally, like a movie, changed my life. Because for the first time in my life, asking questions was not frowned upon. On the contrary, my teacher was super excited that someone was now paying attention to his class and asking so many questions. He was like thrilled. So I remember going home and being so excited about this class and telling my mom, you know what? Scratch the whole cinema thing. I'm going to be a philosopher. And my mom was like, what? What is that? Like she was starting to feel okay with the cinema thing, but a philosopher, like, what is that? You're not going to have a job. Like, we're going to leave it for, what does a philosopher even do? And I was like, I don't care, but that's what I like. And that's where I found meaning. And that's what I'm going to do. Because I really liked going to school for the first time. I liked doing my homework. I liked reading. I liked doing like the extra, going to class and discussing with my teachers and my classmates. It was like super thrilling for me. So I realized if I have to study something, well, I want to do something that I like. But it's one thing to choose that, and then one thing to actually do it. Because here in Mexico, public education is not the best. I don't know how it is for you, wherever you live. So I realized, if I want to do this, I have to find a way. And as sometimes it may sound cliche, but life finds its ways. And there was this teacher that approached me one day, and he said, Gabilondo, because that's what he called me, don't study cinema. You should study philosophy. And I don't know how he knew I was going through all of this crisis in my head. And I said, well, yeah, I want to study philosophy, but I don't know where, and I don't have the money, and what can I do? And he said, don't worry. I'm going to nominate you for a scholarship, and, just try it, and maybe you'll get it. And then, we'd see what happens. So I was like, okay, I went to my home, I tried the link from this scholarship from Adobe, Adobe Photoshop and blah, blah, blah. And the question that they asked is, who are you? Like, why should we give you this scholarship? Who are you? It sounds, maybe they've asked you this question before. It may sound easy and you might have started, or I might have started, well, I'm Jimena Gabilondo, I'm 17, I'm from Mexico City, but that doesn't really say anything about you. So I was sure that if I wanted to win this, it had to be something different. So I was staring at the blank paper and I saw this quote again on top of my desk. Remember that I said that I wrote it down, put it in the top of my desk. And kind of like a movie, that when something happens in your life and you go back and you see all of these flashes like going through your head, I had that moment and I realized all of these different things and travels and people and concept and labels that took me to a certain path and made me like being there that day, writing who I was. So I kind of wrote a story about all of these different dots connecting and finally like meeting into what I thought I was when I was 17. So I wrote that, and long story short, I won the scholarship and I studied philosophy. And that was one of the best decisions that I could ever made, because with philosophy, I was able to connect even more all of these dots that I thought, and I still think, that are part of who I am. I was able to connect my love for animals and nature, my love for questions, of course, my love for storytelling and finding perspectives. I could use all of these things through my career. And what I learned also in my studying philosophy is that all of that anger that I had growing up, like kind of, especially as a teenager, I had a lot of anger that maybe some of you can relate to. I was angry with the world. I was angry that things weren't going as I thought they should be. I was like, why are there people suffering? All of these questions that you have. So I was angry with the system, how we call it. But then I realized that maybe I wasn't completely aware that I was actually part of the things that frustrated me. So the moment that I realized that, for me, in my specific path, was with food. So I was advocating for animals, for nature, for all of these things that I liked. But I went home and I ate these animals that I was trying to save. And I used a lot of products that I then throw in the trash that were actually going to harm this nature and animals that I was trying to save. So when I realized, I felt like a hypocrite. But instead of bringing me down, it gave me actually like a lot of confidence. If you align these things, you'll stop being so angry and you'll actually find meaning. Because they say that us 5 people in the world that study philosophy, we do this because we want to find meaning. And maybe it's true. I mean, we've all had these questions, maybe when you're going to bed, you have all this like existential crisis related questions. And they say that as a philosopher, well, you're trying to actually answer them. And maybe that's true. And I'm not going to say that I found the meaning of life because, wow, imagine. But I found the meaning for my life, which made my anger stop and actually find, kind of like peace. And what I found, and it's not my idea, of course, this is super old, is just this: align your thoughts with your actions. I was worried about the climate. I was worried about nature. I was worried about animals. I was frustrated with authority, all of these things. What was I doing about it besides complaining? And I realized that not a lot. I was complaining a lot, which it's a start. I was trying to find answers through philosophy to these things, which is also a very good start. But in my everyday actions, I was actually not changing anything. I was the same person, just with these different ideas. So when I started to align my actions with these new ideas, things made sense. And I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but for me, it was like clarity, like finding this balance between what I thought I was and who I said I was and what I was doing. And it sounds easy, but most of the time we don't live like that. We have like this separation in our mind of what we do and what we say and what we think. They're not always connected. So if there's anything that I would like to share with you is this, because this changed my life. If you can apply this, like trying to realize the things that you're passionate about, the things that you're really, or maybe angry about, frustrated about, like for example, if you're here, it's probably climate crisis. Try to think, what are you doing? It doesn't have to be like going to the streets and, that's fine, that's okay. But like in your everyday life, what are you doing about it? So it's as easy as that. And that's how I understood it. I was scared about the future. I was seeing in class, and and maybe you've seen it too, of course, you have in the media and everywhere, time is running out. We don't have enough time to act, or we have to act right now. We've had all of these messages, and we're scared about this future that is just right around the corner. And I realized if we want a different future, we have to act differently. So it sounds obvious, but we sometimes don't do this. We have the answers, we have the signs, we have the ideas, but we're not acting differently. And it's like a very simple thing. You want different outcome, do things differently. If you do things in the same way, business as usual, we're going to have we don't have the future that we are so worried about. So I started to act differently. And of course, that led to some criticism, people asking why I was doing all of these things, because I was changing my whole perspective in life, and my whole actions in my life based on this. And maybe it led me to losing some friends, of course, but I found new ones that resonated with these new ideas, with these new actions that I was trying to get into my life. So with all of that said, there was a time when I realized that all of these things that I was learning, that I was trying in my house and in my life, and trying to communicate with my family and my friends, maybe it was something that people would want to also listen to, because maybe they feel as lost as I felt. Because I saw the documentaries, I had the information, I had, the books, I have the data, I have the science, I have everything, but it just felt so overwhelming, and it felt so out of reach. Like, what can I do? I mean, I'm just a girl in Mexico City. What can I do? It's just, it's the politics job, or it's the company's job, or the industry job. Maybe I can't do anything. But there's many things that we can do, and that's why we're going to keep on learning, hopefully, in this workshop. So that's why I decided to found Zero Waste Mexico, to actually transmit this idea of transforming your lifestyle and finding meaning into taking action for the climate, for animals, for people, for whatever you're passionate about. So the concept that I use is this one: be an eco warrior. Why? Because I feel that sometimes in this kind of talks, we find people that we are maybe inspired by, and we put them on a pedestal, like, oh, I want to be like this person. Oh, I want to be like him, that he's doing so much, or like her, that she's doing so much. But they're just people like us. So if we put people on a pedestal, it's good and bad for us and for them. So instead of putting people on a pedestal that have their own lives, their own situation, I try to think it more as a concept. This eco warrior, this abstract concept that we can all want focus our eyes on, and like try every day to become. It's not like I want to be this person in particular, but I want to be like this idea, an eco warrior. So what does an eco warrior do? The first thing an eco warrior has to do is asking questions. I love that. I love asking questions. Like the basis, the foundation of my company and my lifestyle is, as a philosopher, is asking questions. That's the first thing, and that's one thing you can do today. That's an eco warrior. So we have to ask questions about why, what, how, and where we do everything. Like what we eat, like an eco warrior eats, shops, dresses, consumes, moves, does, acts, and transforms. So basically every single decision that you make every day. And as an eco warrior, here comes like the fight part of the warrior. The challenges that you face are pollution, of course, consumerism, that maybe you're frustrated about it, or maybe sometimes you feel attracted to it. Indifference, that maybe sometimes you may feel like, oh, I'm doing all of these things, but I see all of these other people that are doing nothing, and you feel like so frustrated. But there's also that's also linked to ego. So maybe when you're in this process of trying to become an eco warrior, trying to improve your actions, trying to improve your lifestyle, you start feeling kind of like really good about yourself. And that can also lead, if you're not like super conscious about it, to an ego perspective. You can start feeling better than others. And that's not the idea of an eco warrior. An eco warrior, don't think of warrior in the negative term, like in the positive term. It inspires others to change. We're inspiring others to change through our actions, through what we tell them, but not trying to impose anything. If we feel superior and we act superior, the only thing that's going to happen is that indifference that we see is just going to grow, because people don't respond to that. They don't respond to you saying like, why are you still creating trash? Why are you still eating like that? Why are you still doing all these things? That maybe we do these things from our heart. We want to help, but that's not the way. I found in the hard way that that's not the way. And also green and eco washing, that maybe you've heard this before. Greenwashing is, companies and the industry realizing that us as consumers, which I hate that word, but us as consumers, we're now like being very aware about what we buy, and we're about every product that is going to go into our lifestyles. So some companies are going the short way, and they're trying to trick us into us believing that, oh, this product is actually eco-friendly. Maybe they just changed the label and painted it to green and added a little leaf, and they say eco, whatever that means. Or they said, oh, this bottle contains natural ingredients, and that means nothing. But it tries to trick our minds into thinking, oh, this is actually a good product, and because I want to be environmentally conscious, I'm going to buy it. But we have to be super skeptic and aware of if it's an actual thing, or they're just like trying to trick us. And then the eco washing is that there's now a whole idea on environment, on the environmental movement, the eco-friendly lifestyle. And sometimes maybe we see all of these, especially on social media, and we have these like images of what it has to look like. I don't know if you understand what I mean. Like, we see these pictures maybe on Instagram of an eco-friendly lifestyle, and we try to copy them. So maybe we have to buy these specific products. Maybe I have to go and buy like 50 mason jars, and I have to do all these things, and it has to look pretty like this. So that for me is eco-washing, thinking that we have to copy these lifestyles, when the idea is not a new type of consumerism, but it's actually rethinking the way we consume, which is not the same. And we'll talk about this in a sec. So the problems that me, Jimena, trying to become an eco warrior, that I saw that frustrated me were these ones. So I was worried about the climate crisis, and I was worried about waste and a lot of little things that were related to this. Diseases. I mean, this is more obvious than ever. Trash, food waste, extinction of animals and like flora and fauna, deforestation, water, air, land pollution. And then with climate crisis, population growth, which is like a really scary thing. There's numbers saying that we're actually not growing as fast as we thought we were going to grow. We're actually kind of, getting into, how do you say, like a balance. But still, like with the thing with population growth, and not only with population growth, is that this type of crisis affect everyone, but they always affect some minorities, which I don't really like that word, but I don't know the correct word in English, sorry. But like, you understand what I'm trying to say? Like minorities are the first ones to get affected. So it's not the same living in a house, where I live, which is like full of vegetation, so I can breathe maybe better air quality, that being, in the city and like being surrounded by all of these air pollution. It's not like the same kind of lifestyle. And that's like a very big example. But what I mean is that everyone has a specific situation. And sometimes that situation is more vulnerable than the others. And when you are in a more vulnerable situation, these things get to you faster. So that's something that we really have to think about. Like, this is not fair. And maybe sometimes we're not seeing these things in our lives, but it doesn't mean that it's not happening. That's like a fallacy. Because I am not seeing the effects of climate crisis, maybe, it doesn't mean that it's not happening, that it's not happening to someone else. And also, well, water crisis, and that's here in Mexico City, we have 10 years before we actually just open, our shower and there's like no water coming out. We have 10 years, a little bit less, before we ran out of water. And that, like, it's called day zero. It's different for each country, but it's something that really, really scares me and scared me even more back then. So starting with trash. So I use these two big ones because the big ones that I saw every day. Like, I saw trash every day and I saw the effects of the climate crisis every day. So with trash, I don't know how it is where you are, but in Mexico, it's a very big problem. Everywhere, it's a very big problem. But here in Mexico, where I live, and I see it every day, we can see trash everywhere in the streets. So where I live, like I told you, it's full of trees and I'm kind of like surrounded by a forest. But if you go and like look, this thing called a barranca, I don't know how to say it in English, but like here we have, like the houses and kind of like civilization. And here is a completely natural area, but it goes into like this because of Mexican geography. So it's like that. So if you go and you look down beneath the trees, it's full of trash. And it's very sad to see that. And you may have seen this and wherever you've been, in the beach, we see trash. In your city, you see trash. Maybe even in your house, you see trash. So the first time that trash really got to me was one time that I was really hungry. I was really stressed. I was having an exam the next day. So I asked for takeout food. So I asked for delivery. So I got my food delivered and I ate like in 5 minutes because I was super hungry. And in those 5 minutes, I had like this out of body experience that I saw myself, eating this. And all the trash that I created just in 5 minutes. And it made me sick. Like, I was disgusted with myself. Like, how can I have created this amount of trash in just 5 minutes of eating? I knew that was something that I could have avoided or maybe done differently. So when going back and trying to think, what's the cause? What's the root of the trash problem or the waste problem, which is not the same? What's the problem with waste? And I think the root is based on a sick consumerism. We are now more people consuming more at faster rates. And what this creates is, of course, more waste at faster rates. And we are constantly bombarded. We're constantly, is that a word? Like, we're constantly told to buy more things, to get the new product. It is not necessarily our fault. Like, for example, our phones and our electronics are designed to stop working, so we have to buy other ones, sadly. But we're also constantly told in social media and everywhere else that we have to have this new product, we have to buy these new clothes, we have to have this new thing. And because maybe we are sad or maybe we are bored or something, especially now that we're all at home, we click on it or we go and buy that and we convince ourselves that, yeah, I actually really do need that product. I actually do need to buy that thing. I actually do need to go to Costco and buy like this amount of food because it's a better deal. So we go into this sick consumerism kind of thing that we buy more faster and we are wasting more faster. And it's not just things. So what I try to find, when I try to find a solution to this sick consumerism, for me, trying to find a solution in my lifestyle, I found zero waste. And maybe for some of you, it's not new, But for me, 7 years ago in Mexico, this was super new. Like I didn't know anyone else that was um, learning about this. I mean, probably there were others learning about this, but I didn't really know anyone. So it was really, really new for me. And what I learned with zero waste is that the goal is to not generate the waste, but there are certain things that through these 7 years of putting this into practice that have changed in my perspective of what zero waste is. For example, I use that image of the mason jar that maybe you have seen. It's like the image of zero waste. And I tried that mason jar thing so long and I was never able to, to do it. And it's not because I wasn't trying hard enough, but because the movement wasn't telling me, like, the small letters, like it's not as easy as it seems. It's not about just not generating waste. It's about seeing things differently. I'm going to explain that in a second. I realized, and at least for me, zero waste is not just about trash. That's why, especially when I give these workshops in Spanish, I don't like the word trash. In Spanish, it's called basura. I don't like that word. I don't like trash because we think of things that are not necessarily trash as of trash. For example, where I live, like I said, there are a lot of trees, so the leaves fall off. And we as humans feel like we have to sweep these leaves because they look ugly. So we sweep them and we put them in these big plastic bags and we throw them. So leaves are not trash. They're falling from the trees into the earth, into the soil for a reason. We think they look dirty because that's the way we have told ourselves, like that's the story we keep telling ourselves, that we have to clean these, but it's actually not dirty, right? So waste is not just about trash. For example, food, if you create organic, how do you say, like discards, it's not trash, but you can create it into trash if you don't use it correctly. And that's when it's wasteful. And we can waste food, and we can waste energy, and we can waste resources, and we can waste all of these different things. So that's what zero waste actually means to me. It's not just about the pretty Pinterest image of your cupboard filled with mason jars and you saying you didn't generate any trash, but it's actually being very aware of how you look at items, at things, and try to expand the life of those things to not create waste, right? So that's what zero waste means to me. And I actually do like the R's that zero waste teaches, because we know we've all seen the three typical R's in school or somewhere else, like, reduce, reuse, and recycle, right? We've all seen this. But why do you think there's so much emphasis, even now, into recycling? And you can tell me, please, in the chat, or you can like open your microphone. Why do you think we are still constantly told to recycle, and that recycling is so great? It's still the main focus. Come on, I know you have the answer. Like I just said that.
So maybe
Okay.
one thing could be like they just it's better for example, for companies and stuff, for us to consume more. So instead of telling us to reduce, they'll tell us to recycle, because that includes like you keep consuming.
Yeah, exactly. So Karina and Yara wrote in the chat as well. It's a business and companies want to consume. Exactly. So like I said, the root of this problem is a sick idea, like a sick consumerism. So someone says, estamos acostumbrados a generar desechos. Okay, we are used to generate waste instead of thinking. Exactly. So if you go into this, like sick consumerism, right? That's the root. So why are we told to recycle? Because it's a business. Recycling is a business. We have to be very aware of that. It's not something that people only do from the bottom of their hearts. Maybe they do, but it's not just because of that. It's an actual business. And because if you reduce or reuse, you're not consuming, or you're not consuming as much. But if you recycle, maybe you can still keep consuming, business as usual, but you feel better because, well, it's getting recycled, right? But if recycling was the solution, we wouldn't be here talking about this. It's one of the things we have to do, but it's not the solution, right? So they did a little experiment in the United States in a school that shows this point. They had this table and they put 3 different flavors of water, and they had this little like area where you can get like paper cups to try these waters. So people went, they grabbed a paper cup and they tried one of the waters, tasted it, finished it, next water, tasted, finished it, next water, tasted, finished it, and into the trash bin. They did the exact same thing, but they added a trash bin next to the paper cup saying all of these paper cups get recycled. So what do you think happened? People went into the water station and they grabbed one of the paper cups, they tried the first water and they threw it, and they grabbed another paper cup, next water, throw it, another paper cup, next, So paradoxically, this idea of recycling actually makes us consume more, because we're not actually questioning from the root the problem, what's actually going on. We're thinking and we're giving like a little pat in the back to ourselves, like, it's okay, it's going to get recycled. It's like no problem. We're not actually asking more questions about the product, who actually need them, where it comes from, what it's made of. We're just asking if the product itself or maybe just the packaging can get recycled. And also with recycling, a lot of things can get recycled, but not everything can be recycled. And not everything can be recycled forever. For example, plastics, some plastics can be recycled, it's true, but they cannot be recycled at an infinite amount of times. There's going to be a moment when they lose their properties and they can't be recycled anymore. And what do you think is going to happen? It's going to get wasted. It's going to be trash in that case. Anna writes, we think someone else will do the job for me. Exactly. It's kind of like that mentality. Like, I'll put it in the recycling bin, like in the best case scenario, right? Like, it'll get recycled. So zero waste, and I use circular philosophy. We're going to talk about that in a sec. Changes the idea of the 3 R's, like reduce, reuse, recycle, that maybe if we have been taught to use them in that way, like reuse, reduce first and then recycle, but we're like constantly told about recycling. So they actually try new R's. There are normally 5, but I actually add 2 more and others had them. So we're going to talk about 7 new R's that sound like a lot, but if you think about them, if you really think about them, they're very obvious, they're common sense. So the first one is rethinking. Like I said, an eco-warrior has to ask questions all the time. That's like your superpower. So we have to rethink what we sometimes take for granted or we don't really think because it's always been there. We have to rethink our actions, products, if we really need them in our life, if we are being maybe we're a victim of greenwashing or we are a victim of sick consumerism. We have to rethink the items and the things in which we put our money to, what we buy, what we want. Like, why do I want this? Do I really need it? Or do I think I want it? Is it going to give meaning to my life? That's the first step. And just by doing this, you're going to reduce so many things, like so many impulsive buys that we are sometimes we sometimes face. We bought this just because we saw it was we saw it on Amazon and we thought we needed it and it was cheap and so we bought it, right? But if you rethink constantly the things that go into your life and your actions, where it comes from, all of these questions, that's the first step. Then the next step is reusing. So the second step is reusing because you have to use what you already have. And that's linked to what I said before about greenwashing. Like, sometimes they tell us, oh, you want to be zero waste? Well, you have to buy this very beautiful bamboo cutlery set. So maybe the bamboo cutlery set is very nice, it's very pretty, it's very, you feel like you want it in your life. but maybe you don't really have to. You can just go into your kitchen and you already may have like cutlery that you can use and a paper napkin that you can use, and wrap it, and maybe it's like your own zero waste kit create in your kitchen. If you really think you need it because it weighs less, or because you want to bring into the airplane and you don't know if they're going to be they're going to let you only use like kind of like bamboo things, well, but you have to really make it conscious. If that's the reason why you want the kit, great. If the only reason is that you want to go into a restaurant and try to use your own cutlery, then maybe you can bring it from home, right? So that's like one example of things we can refuse. I'm sorry, I'm talking about reuse first. So I'm sorry, I talked about reduce first, but it's actually linked. The first thing is refusing, but it's actually linked to refusing and reducing. These three for me are like almost like going to one, because you're going to refuse participating in sick consumerism by rethinking, and you're going to refuse things that are going to translate into immediate trash. Same idea. You go into a restaurant and they're going to give you your order, and they give you like this little sauce packaging thingies, and you can refuse them because you don't want them. You don't need them. So that's refusing. And you're going to reduce your trash by refusing them. And you're going to reduce your trash even by bringing your own, I don't know, cup, your own mug, your own cutlery, and so. So for me, these are the three most important. Rethinking your action, refusing to participate in things that generate waste, refusing to get your mail maybe in a paper form, and maybe get it all in your email, reducing the amount of things that you buy by using what you have in your house, and reducing the amount of things that you think you need to buy. So for me, those are the three mains. And then these three that can be seen as one are connected to the second one, which is reusing, which is using what you already have again. So rethink the things that you think you need. It sounds like rethink the things that you think you need. Refuse to participate in wasteful practices and wasteful materials. Reduce the amount of things that you buy and the amount of things that you actually own, kind of like a minimalistic approach. And then reuse what you already have. So the idea of all of these three, and then the fourth one, is to actually, the things that already exist, try to extend its life. So I use these R's differently as some other people tell them in zero waste. I don't think about, go ahead and buy mason jars and buy in bulk. I mean, yes, of course, but if you rethink your actions, those answers are going to come very obviously to you. Like, if I have to refuse, I have to reduce and reuse, well, it's obvious that I have to buy in a different way. I have to rethink the way that I was used to buying things. Maybe for me, for example, is stop going to these big supermarkets and getting everything in plastic. And for me, it's trying to go into local businesses. Here in Mexico, we have things called tianguis, which are like very small markets on the streets, with that you have a direct relationship with the farmer, the agriculture. I don't know the word, but like that's like a direct connection instead of just the business and the company. You actually buy it from the people that does that product, if it's food or if it's clothes or it's whatever. We have those things in Mexico. We're very lucky. So for me, it was stop going to the super big supermarkets and buying a lot and creating a lot of waste, and going into the small ones, because I was able to do that. Bringing my own containers, bringing my own bags, refusing things that I now knew weren't important. For example, I used to have like 10 different products for my hair. So I thought, and for my body. So I thought I needed a cream for my eyes, a cream for my hair, a different shampoo for this type of hair, and a conditioner, a deodorant for this type of my body, and then like a cream, body lotion, and all of these different products that I thought I needed because I was told I needed them. And by rethinking all of these, I realized that I really just needed one bar of soap, believe it or not, and I really just needed some oil, and that was about it. And maybe like, deodorant. Those three things are the only things that I needed, not all of these 10,000 products. And actually, I used to have kind of like acne, not a lot, but I used to have acne. And by reducing my the products that I used, instead of going into all of these dermatologists, like reducing my face changed, like my acne went away because I wasn't putting so much things into my body. So rethink your actions, refuse to participate in wasteful practices, reduce what you want to buy and what you have, and reuse what you already own or what others already own. So that way, with these four, we're not participating in sick consumerism. The next is repairing, because we sometimes forget these are. Maybe something broke, and instead of going and buying a new one because it's so, we're tempted, we can maybe repair it. Maybe your shoes can still be repaired. Maybe your phone can be repaired. Maybe your whatever, your shirt can be repaired. And then we can recycle. After we've done all of these things that really help us avoid wasteful practices into our life, we can recycle the things that we couldn't avoid, which are going to happen. Like thinking that someone living a zero waste lifestyle never recycles, for me is kind of like a trap. I mean, I don't think it's very realistic. Sometimes we are going to have to recycle. Like, for example, if you need to buy medicine, you go ahead and you have to buy the medicine, but you can recycle the packaging. Those are moments in your life when you have to actually think, okay, I mean, I don't want to be wasteful, but I actually need the medicine. I'm gonna buy it, and then I'm gonna be responsible for the product, and I'm not gonna create it into waste. I'm gonna recycle it, or maybe I'm gonna reuse it, or maybe I'm gonna whatever. But then it's recycling. Only then. Not the first thing, like I go to the store, buy something, and feel good about myself because I can recycle it. You go to the store and think, do I really need it? That's the first thing. And then the last one, but it's not the least important, maybe sometimes it can be the first thing, is rot. Or well, I'm not going to tell you. What do you think rot means? Maybe you've heard these, maybe you know about zero waste. What do you think rot means and why it's in green? Tell me. Compost, Jordi Bertrand. Okay, thank you. Yes, composting. Because a lot of, like I said before, waste is not about trash, about paper, about plastic, but what we usually associate with trash. It's just about not being wasteful, about materials and other things. And one thing that we shouldn't be wasteful, we shouldn't be wasting is organic waste, like organic scraps, what we use in our kitchen. We shouldn't be wasting that, because in nature, we have residues. Sometimes in Spanish, for example, they translate zero waste into cero residuo. Residuo means residues, which is a wrong translation, because in nature, we do have residue, but all of those residues, they're actually nutrients. They don't get wasted. We are the ones that have created systems where we create waste. So with organic things, we shouldn't be putting them into bags of plastic and throwing them and feeling good about ourselves because we separated our trash. Here in Mexico, for example, they only ask us to separate our trash into organic and non-organic. That's it. And sometimes if you don't do it, it's fine. But what do we do with the organic part? Sometimes we do nothing. We just separate them and think it's fine, But think about it. We sometimes put it into big bags of plastic and we throw them away. And what do you think is going to happen to that? It's not going to become nutrients for the soil. It's going to stay in the plastic bag, and it's maybe going to create gases, and maybe one day it will explode, but it won't fulfill, kind of like, it sounds cheesy, but it's destiny to return to the ground. So what we have to do is actually return these things and create and fulfill this purpose of being nutrients by composting. And composting sounds difficult maybe for some of you, the ones, tell me in the chat if you already compost at home. Maybe you think it sounds difficult. I know, for example, when I was living with my mom, that I was doing all of these things. She was really worried about the composting part because she thought it was going to smell. That's the thing that we think, oh, it's going to smell, it's going to create bugs, but not really. If we do it properly, it's not going to create bugs, it's not going to smell, and it's actually very rewarding. Because like I said at the beginning, let's try to think this in a positive manner. So we sometimes hear in these circles like, oh, humanity is the actual virus, like we turn everything into something disgusting. We've heard all of these things before, maybe even said them. But I like composting as an example of us as humans seeing something in nature and transforming it and actually improving it. So we saw that when things fall into the earth, they turn into nutrient and they decompose, maybe with the help of animals and the environment, and they return to the soil. So we thought maybe if we dig and we buried these things, they would decompose faster. And we saw that. And then we thought maybe if I control the environment, if I control the amount of organic matter that I add, maybe if I control these things, I can do it even faster. So sometimes composting naturally happens in about a year, and they are human composts processes that take 3 days. So that's an example of seeing something in nature and transforming it with tools or with technology into something with an even greater positive impact. So that's why I like to talk about composting, because it's actually even therapeutic to see your what you thought was waste turn into soil, and to use that and to know that soil is full of, like, it's a rich soil full of nutrients. Someone saying, may I say something? Yeah, sure, of course.
Yes, am I audible?
Mm-hmm.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay, so I understood what you told, but I'm really, really sorry to say. I mean, I think for last half an hour or so, I think my connection was very down. Before rethinking these 7 hours, I couldn't understand anything. And I knew that might sound very much odd, but
Don't
I
worry. Do
think
you want me to go back to them? I was actually going to go back to them in the end.
yes,
Don't worry. Don't worry.
uh,
Thank you. So,
yes,
well, I talked about compost. That's the last one. So I
yes,
know
I
it
have
makes
done.
sense. Yeah.
Yes, yes. I wanted to say I heard from where you started about your little bit introduction, and then it suddenly went off. I don't know how. I think something
No.
was happening, but after that, suddenly the voice came, and the thing started was with the 7 hours. I think you
Okay.
were talking about the
Did
rethinking.
anybody have the same problem, or it was just him? Well, don't worry. I'll go back to them. Okay. So
Thank you.
don't worry. Rethinking, because it's actually kind of overwhelming maybe at the beginning if we haven't seen these R's before. But like I said, don't try to learn them, in the specific order. It's more like by common sense. So rethinking the things that we think we need, that we are told we need, where they come from, where are they made, who makes them, like who makes my clothes, for example. Those are questions that we normally don't ask ourselves, like who made
Yes,
this sweater.
yes, you are correct. I agree to it. Actually, I
Mhm.
think you understand what I meant. I meant that from rethinking that you said the 7 hours, I heard
Mhm.
everything. I
Ah,
mean, I
okay,
listened
okay.
everything, but
Mhm.
before that, I didn't listen to anything. Before that,
So before rot?
I- before this 7 hours, before these 7 hours, I
Ah,
couldn't hear
before.
anything.
Don't worry, don't
Yes,
worry. So at the end of this workshop, you're gonna receive a guide, with everything that was told in this workshop. So if you miss something or you feel like you have to like write something, don't worry, just concentrate, and then you'll get it in your email and you can review it again, and don't
okay.
worry. Okay?
So only one word I will then ask. I think
Mm-hmm.
because you were using this word, and I think you used it in the previous slides as well. Um, this one word was something like sick commercialization or something.
Sick consumerism.
Yes, just can you
Mm-hmm.
just make it understand? It went over my head.
Yeah, I think that's like the root of this problem. Like with waste, it's just sick consumerism. And if we think
Yes, what
about
is
that,
that?
we don't have to learn the R's, we don't have to learn all of these things if we don't want to. It's just being conscious about this sick consumerism. and how we can change it, like not being a part of it.
So
Okay.
may I know what's that?
What's sick consumerism?
Yes.
Okay, so sick consumerism is thinking that we have to buy a lot of things and participate in buying a lot of things all the time, like buying new things, right? Someone says you can check the video of the complete session on YouTube. Oh, thank you. Yeah. So I forgot we were
Yes,
recording this.
obviously. Yes, yes, yes. But I
Okay,
just
so
wanted to know so that I can continue with the session with a clear understanding.
okay, don't worry, don't worry. So does anyone else have a questions or any questions, or we should go ahead, move forward?
How can we do home composting?
Okay,
I
so that's a
mean,
really good question. I was gonna go into that. So it really depends on where you live. There are 20 different types of composting. Sometimes we only learn about 3 or 4. Like vermicompost, which is with worms. We learn about kind of like a pile compost that adding different piles of organic material and then dry materials like your organic waste and then like um, soil and then again the organic waste and soil, like kind of like this like a, how do you say lasagna in English, like yeah, so you go into this, you like stack it. But because there are 20 types of composting, you're gonna get them in your guide. Because if we go into, oh, here where I live it's like super humid, or where I live I don't have space, or I live with my parents, like we all have like different situations in our lives. But what I wanted to say is like composting is not hard and you can do it anywhere. It doesn't matter if you live in like a super tiny apartment or a super big house, or if you live in the beach or you live in the city, it doesn't really matter. You can adapt different composting methods into your lifestyle, and you're going to get those in your guide. So don't worry about that, because what I said at the beginning, for those who didn't listen or weren't here, is that more than getting into the actual things, like I want to tell you that kind of like inspire you to do the research yourself. And it sounds maybe like I'm not giving you the answers, but that's the idea. Because we all have different situations. Like I have the answers that worked for me here in Mexico in my house, but they may not be the same for you. That's why I told you, like, don't be like me. It's like, be an eco warrior. And an eco warrior needs to question the things that they do on a daily basis and then research and rethink and think, okay, so I know all of these things, and in my specific place and life, how can I improve them? And you have to do the research yourself, maybe with the help of the guide that you will have at the end, maybe with this inspiration kind of thing as well in this workshop. But it's not like I'm not doing the work for you. It's like more that I know that trying to tell you, oh, this is how you should do it because that's the way I do it, is very naive, because we all have a different lifestyle. And maybe some things will work for me and some things won't work for you. And the idea, it's not more like following a process and a set of rules, like do this, don't do this, don't do that. It's more about being conscious. It sounds easy, but it's not easy. Being super conscious about every single thing, every single decision in your life. That's the superpower of an eco warrior, being super conscious about what am I going to buy, what am I going to do, what am I going to say, and what impact is that going to have in my life and in others. Okay, so that goes into the next part, which is someone says during the festival there was an amazing workshop from Resilience 2020. They show you how to make compost. Yay, they're my friends. Yes, so Resilience 2020, yeah, they're my friends. It's an idea of transforming your house into an eco house, like with all of these different things in your house that will help you have a positive impact. So that's one idea. That's one project that you can follow. And there are probably, where you live in your community, there are other projects and there are other people doing these things. I mean, I'm obviously not the only one. There's so many ideas, so many things going on, right? So, okay, moving forward. So, and don't
well,
worry,
may
if
I
at
ask
the
one
end you
more
have
thing?
questions, yes.
Yes, so you just told me about home composting and all the ways. I mean,
Mhm.
what is the first step to be super conscious?
Asking questions, as easy as that.
Oh, So
Just
I
asking
am
questions. It sounds easy, but asking questions about every single decision and item that you have to buy is something that we don't do normally. We just go to the store and we buy it. We just
and if we
um
do it, we get a good scolding.
I go what?
I always face that whenever I ask question on anything, I just get scolding if they don't have the answer.
Yeah. Yeah, but the idea is to ask questions constantly. Okay? Okay.
Yes.
So, okay, moving forward. So the second thing, we talked about trash a lot. Don't worry. Now we're going to talk about the second thing that really frustrated me learning about this was the climate crisis in. Yeah, I know, I understood. Yeah, he gets scolded. That's what I said at the beginning. Like, but that's why it's kind of like you, by being an eco warrior, that's the actual struggle. Like, keep going, like despite getting like maybe criticized, you have to keep going. So, like I said, the second thing that really frustrated me was the climate crisis in particular. Like it sounds like in general more like it sounds super overwhelming. Like all these things that we are seeing in the world, like, fires and deforestation and water pollution, and air pollution, and all of these things. The rise in temperature. I was really frustrated about that. And what, as a philosopher, trying to understand why were we doing all of this harm to our planet? Why are we doing this? Us as individuals, but us as humans, why are we doing this? So for me, understanding this, and this was actually my thesis, is that underneath all of this destruction is a false idea of the world. So it's this idea of, tell me if I say this correctly, hierarchies, yeah, hierarchies in which we think that the world is like this, like a triangle, that some are in the top and some are in the bottom. So this idea is sometimes even perpetuated through religion, through biology, through many other disciplines, through law. So we think it's real because, we've been told that. We've been told that us humans were at the top and the rest is at the bottom, and we can use all of this, the rest, right? But this idea not only translates into humans and then animals and nature, but also with humans. So with crisis in particular, for example, feminism realizes that we have this idea that some people are at the top and some people are at the bottom. This idea that, for example, we call it in philosophy the A side and the not A side. So on the A side, we have maybe men or male associated values, and then we have culture and reason, and then like whiteness. And then on the not A side, we have female or female values or females, and we have nature, and we have non-whiteness, and then here we have like Catholic or Christian religion, here other religions, the things that we think that are better. Sounds horrible, that's the way that we think. Not always things, okay, of course not always if you're conscious, but that's like the general idea. So we have this idea of things that we give more value to, and that's like we can see them in different social movements, like racial movement, like sexist movement, or the feminist movement. The idea is still the same. The root of the problem is our hierarchies. The idea that some are at the top and some are at the bottom. And if you're lucky enough to be one of the groups that can be at the top, but if you're at the bottom, then that's when you realize how this works. But these are just stories that we tell ourselves. History, and maybe someone here may not agree, but from a philosophical point of view, history and religion and science and all of these things are man-made. Like we created them. So they are stories that we tell ourselves, and we can change the narrative as well. Like we created this narrative, we can change it. It's not like an universal truth that cannot be changed, right? So these hierarchies are what we sorry. So these hierarchies are the first thing that we have to realize that we're doing in our lives. Maybe we're doing it, we don't think we're doing it with humans, but we're doing it to animals, for example. We think that because we are humans, we are better than animals. We think that because we are humans and we are at the top, we are better than nature, without realizing that we are also animals and we are also nature. When I say human, when I say animals, you may think of your dog, you may think of a cow, you may think of whatever. And when I say nature, you may think of, I don't know, the forest or a beach, but you don't think about yourself, even though you are an animal as well, and you are part of nature as well. So we've forgotten these through a false idea of progress, that in order to progress, we have to separate ourselves from animals and we have to separate ourselves from nature because they are inferior. And if we want to be superior, we have to separate. So that's the culture that we have been taught. And of course, things are changing. We are changing now, depending on your point of view and your generation. Maybe you've seen this before. Maybe you are aware of this, or maybe you didn't know the name of it, but you knew something was wrong about the way we understand our position in the world. So instead of a hierarchy in which some are at the top and some are at the bottom, and those in the bottom can be used by those at the top, we need to think in a circular way. So more like putting life at the center, all of life. So we're all connected. In reality, all of our lives are interconnected. Thinking in the progress idea that we can get separated, that we can, separate our nature from others, that we can separate ourselves through the view of progress, is actually something that we are now realizing that is paradoxically ending our lives. That's the main problem. I think the root of the problem with climate crisis is that we think that we are separated when we're actually a part of it. And if we put life at the center, everything changes. And if you want to read more about these, which I call the ego perspective versus the eco perspective, email me and I can send you my thesis. It's very long, but you can read it if you want to. So one of the solutions, besides realizing these hierarchy, abandoning these hierarchies, is thinking through sustainability, that we've learned about this probably before. So sustainability does, like, after studying natural processes, we try to find a balance between economic growth, caring for the environment, and social welfare. So the three have to be in a balance. We can't just focus on economic growth, because we have to care for the environment as well, and we also have to care about social welfare because they are connected. And the thing is, we talk about sustainability and we make an emphasis on economic growth because that's the system, like the capitalist system, that we are immersed on. But it doesn't mean that it's the only system. I'm not saying I have the answer for a new one, but we can think of new ones. But still, sustainability could be applied even in new models, because the idea is living well, enough for everyone, without damaging others, meaning other animals, other humans, or other like nature. That's the idea, and trying to have a positive impact. Stop thinking just in progress, but actually thinking in a way of balance. Still, sustainability now is not enough, because it's not just about stop doing what we were doing, like stop cutting trees. Okay, so yeah, stop cutting trees, but also what happened to all of the damage that we already made? We have to regenerate. We have to help the earth regenerate itself faster. So regeneration leads to sustainability and takes it even further. And we emulate and regenerate. And we can do this in our house, for example, if we have the space. Like by composting, we are helping regenerate the earth by taking those nutrients back to the soil. If you have space and you have like a little garden, or you have a little even plants in your house, that's like kind of ideas of regeneration that you can do. If you can go even further, think about regeneration and sustainability in your workplace, in your school. Like, what things can you do not only to stop the problems, but also help them recover? Because we don't have a lot of time to just stop. We also have to recover and then build something new based on that. And the last thing, which not a lot of us learn, is environmental ethics. So that was my specialty in philosophy, environmental ethics. I don't know if you've heard it before. Maybe we have heard of ethics, but not environmental ethics. So the idea is this. So in ethics, we talk about the problem with the great other. That's how we call it in philosophy, no? The great other. Who is this great other? Like the other human, different than me. How should I relate to this human? How should I behave with this other? But ethics has always been thought just between humans, between me and my parents and my siblings, or maybe my peers, and maybe between countries, like in humans. How should we behave, trying to find a common ground and common good? That's the idea. But now ethics has expanded and not only thinks of the great other as other humans, but also the other animals and the other plants and natural beings. Because we no longer think, because we see this, that what we do only affects other humans. What we do affects every living creature. And what every living creature does also affects us. And maybe it sounds very romantic, but there's a documentary that I really like called One Strange Rock. I don't know if you've seen it, that shows this. Like, things that are happening in the ocean here in Asia actually directly connect to things that are happening in the jungle, in the Amazonian jungle, right? So these things are connected, and those things affect us as humans. And maybe we are realizing this more with the pandemic. Like, things that are happening here have a direct impact here, other places. We are not separated. So that's the idea between environmental ethics. So the things that we have to do through environmental ethics, the first thing is a change of paradigm. So what happened before is, as humans, we lived in small civilizations, and maybe we wanted wood, so we went into the forest and we cut some wood, we cut some trees, and we used the wood for our little town. And then we wanted to fish because we wanted to eat, so we went and we went fishing. We grabbed 3 fishes and we took it back to wherever we lived. So we did these practices, in small kind of like impacts. And maybe there was another small village or a small area that was doing the exact same things. And when they went back to the forest because they needed trees again, they needed wood again, they saw that the forest was still there and it was still huge. And we had, then that's where these ideas of nature is infinite, and nature always provides, and we always have things from nature. There will always be fish in the sea. That's where that comes from, because we kept seeing that it was there. It was like so abundant. But with the rise of civilization and modern civilization, where we are now, and connectivity and technology and so on, we now don't go into the forest and cut 3 trees. We cut a whole forest. And we don't wait 500 years for it to regenerate. We go and we need another one very quickly, and we finish that forest again. And then the other, and then the other. And then we don't go into the ocean and grab like 3 fishes. We go and take these huge nets and take everything that we can in our path, like in our way. And we take fish and we take dolphins and we take turtles and everything into these big nets. So that was a change of paradigm that made philosophers realize that ethics was not only between humans, we have to expand it into every living creature. So thinking that it doesn't matter if I hurt animals or if I hurt nature, is not longer something that, at least from an ethic perspective, is correct. Because we now know that what we do to others, other humans, other animals, and other beings, affects them and affects us. And we are all connected. We now know that. So we can't keep making excuses about they're inferior or something like that. I don't think it's your case, but I do get into kind of like those conversations sometimes. And this change of paradigm leads to this new responsibility that I was talking about. We are responsible for our decisions. So I don't care if you dress and you like to dress in purple, or if you like to wear shorts, or if you like to cut your hair, like those things, you can do whatever you want. But there is now a very fine line we have to be careful, but it's a very fine line between our personal actions and public actions. Because yes, we have a personal life and we can do things with our personal life, but we have to be aware that our personal decisions really do have an impact on everything else. They're not isolated. Our lives are not separated. They're not isolated to others. We are connected, and what others do affects me, and what I do affects others. And like I said before, others, not only humans, like all living beings. So that leads us to some responsibility. We cannot be perfect, of course, but we have to be conscious about this responsibility of what can I do to reduce or stop harming in my actions others. What can I do to have a positive impact? And then it's also linked to what I told before about the hierarchies. Like, stop thinking in a hierarchical mode. Like, stop thinking like this, like a pyramid, like some are at the top and some are at the bottom, and start thinking as a circle. Like, we are all in the same, planet. We are all living these consequences. We are all connected. It sounds very romantic, but it's actually very true, and we now know that. So it sounds like this responsibility may feel like a lot, but it's actually trying to translate it into a positive one. If we have so much power in our actions that we can actually affect everything else, what happens if we change our actions into positive ones, or we try to that our actions have a positive impact? So what happens is that that responsibility, that power translates into positive outcomes, right? So don't think it in a negative way, like, oh, I have so much responsibility, like I have to check all of my decisions. No, think about it like as like a powerful way, like an empowering way. Like, okay, so what I do actually has meaning. Even if I'm just one person, what I do has meaning. So if I transform that into a positive way, that creates a positive meaning, that creates like a kind of like a ripple wave. So that's also linked to semiotics, which I don't know if you remember from school, maybe, but something that we learn in philosophy is the power and the use of words. What we say and how we say it is very important and really changes and impacts the world. For example, feminists have known this for a while, like how we refer to the world actually changes our perspective and changes our actions. In Spanish, for example, we have these pronouns that we say, when we have a lot of people, we say todos, like all of you, but it's in a masculine way, instead of saying todas with an A, which it would be like feminine way. Even if it's 100 women and just one man, we have to say todos in the masculine form of the tense. Why? I don't know. So that's one way that feminism has realized that the use of language really does change the way that we relate to others. So if we change our language, we can do exactly that, but we change it in a positive way. For example, into the environmental area, we say cars, and then we call electric cars. So if we add a label to the electric cars, but in our minds, adding labels means that is the weird area. The things that don't have labels are the normal things. When we add labels, even if we think there are positive labels, in our brain, those are different. So we are scared of different things. We are scared of change. So even if we say electric cars, by adding that label, we change things, right? So still with the example of feminism, for example, in Spanish, when we have, there's going to be a congress of different people, and they say it's going to be a men congress, meaning for everyone. But when there's going to be just a women congress, they say women congress or women whatever. They add the label. When they don't add the label, it means it's for everyone. So that means that the label is the difference. Label means difference, even if we try to make it into a positive one. So by saying electric cars, we add that label in our brain. That's the different thing. It's not the normal thing. The normal things are just cars. So it sounds weird, but we have to change and label the things that are actually negative into building a positive future. So another example is calling animals livestock. That for me in English is just so weird. Like we call them livestock. What does that mean in our brains? There are things that we can use, that we can exploit for money because they're livestock, right? They're stock that is alive. Um, or maybe resources, calling nature resources, like natural resources. Again, the word resources in our brains means that those are things that we can take because they're resources. It's there for us, right? And another way that the changing our language actually goes into politics is, for example, we now use climate change a lot, right? But that was actually a political decision. Saying climate change was a political decision because in our brains, change and climate are happening all the time. Climate changes all the time, you know, from winter to summer. Change happens every day. So in our mind, it's not like, it doesn't call for emergency. We now know it's an emergency. We are aware of that, but just the use of the word in our mind is not like, it's not big enough. It's not an emergency, you know, like, for example, if you read the first articles on coronavirus, the language used was of emergency, and that's why we were all scared. Now it's not as much because we're very tired of the whole thing, so we're changing the language and people feel like it's not as bad maybe. Also with climate crisis, that's why I call it climate crisis, because it's not just climate change, it's a climate crisis, it's a planetary crisis. So by changing the way that we use our words and then we change our perspective. That's the power of semiotics, and that's something that environmental ethics does as well. And it's something that younger generations are realizing, the power of words, of language and speech. And maybe they're sometimes mocked, like, why are you trying to use like inclusive language? Like, that's not the way language works. But it actually does. Language is something that shapes our minds. And if we change it, we can actually change the way that we think. It's very interesting. So that's what I was saying. Like, we change my actions, change what I'm doing, change what I'm saying, and then I change my perspective. And if we change my perspective, in the long run, you can change the world. And again, it sounds very romantic and super easy. But the world, companies, politics, it sounds abstract, but it's made of people. And if every single person was doing this, was asking these questions, was changing their paradigm, was changing their actions and the way that they speak, they would change their perspectives, and then we would change the world. Like, I really like something that a friend once told me, like, if you do well to the one that's next to you, the first one next to you, and that person does the same and the same and the same and the same, we would be telling a different story, right? But we usually don't do that. We don't focus on that because we think it's not going to be enough. But us as individuals, we have to start there. We have to start there, and then it will expand so eventually. And we're seeing this now. For example, I really like this example, veganism. I don't know if anyone here is vegan, but veganism is like a very small, where a very small amount of people are vegan in the world, like 1% or 2%, right? Something like that. Depending on where you live, the amount may be higher or lower. And still, even if it seems so small, we are now seeing every day more restaurants, more products, more information about veganism. Why? Because even if there are not a lot of people, the people that are vegans are so committed to their activism or to their ideas. They're so committed that they're actually changing the fiber of the world. And we could do the exact thing with environmental ethics. So think about the world like all of these different fibers, kind of like my sweater. And you are one of the fibers, and we're all the different fibers. And if 10 of these fibers, just 10, are pulling very strongly into the same direction, even if it's not the whole thing, it's going to shift. So that's how revolutions start. It doesn't have to be everyone. It just has to be people that are actually very, very committed with the cause. And those are the eco warriors in my, that's what I want to create with these eco warriors, like change our actions, our perspective, and then we would be able to change the world. And not just in your everyday life, you're in your house, but this also, of course, translates to wherever else you're at, like at your workplace, at your school, all of the things that you have to start doing and inspiring others to do for change. So the next thing we have to do through all of these that we have learned is stop thinking, like I said, stop using hierarchies and stop thinking that we're separated. Stop thinking in a linear way and start thinking in a circular way. So in a linear way, meaning that we're not separated from others. Stop thinking that our lives are never touching others' lives, that our decisions are just our own. They are our own, but they do have an impact on others. And start thinking in a circular way. And one way that we are starting to do this is, for example, with circular economy. You may have heard this before. We realize that the idea of linear economy, of just taking, using, and throwing, is damaging us, and we have to stop. So we have to think in a circular way, like not taking but creating, and then using, and then not throwing but returning, kind of like a more natural circular way. And if you think about it, we think in linear ways in not just in economy. For example, in theater or in cinema, we have 3 acts. Or in time, we think past, present, future, and we only see things in a line. And the thing with lines is that they're infinite. And because they're infinite, and our brain can only process what it's in front of it, we can only think of our moment. Like, I can only think of my perspective, kind of like these horses that they add these things so they can only see like the front. That's what happens when we think in a linear way. But if we think in a circular way, we can see the big picture. We can see the whole thing, and we can see that we're actually all connected, and that my actions will have an impact on others today and in the future, and that future will create like other effects. It's bigger than just thinking in a linear way, like past, present, future, and we only focus in our present and what I care about. So that's why here in Zero Waste Mexico, we created this method called circular philosophy, which is not circular economy. It's a circular philosophy. It's a new way of thinking. So what it seeks, like it says there, is a paradigm shift to strengthen creative thinking with an environmental focus and sense of life committed to the environment. Seeing the big picture, realizing that we're all in this together, sounds romantic again, and using environmental ethics and regenerative sustainability and zero waste and closed loop ideas and practices in our everyday lives, in our home, in our workplace, in our school, and realizing that the center of our decisions should be life itself, like creating life, promoting life in a positive way. Like everyone should have a good life. It sounds like a very big goal, but that is our goal. Even if it sounds super distant or super big, we should be aiming all of our decisions, everyday decisions, into that, like putting life in the center, right? So how can we start today? How can I start today? How can I be an eco warrior today? So like I said before, the first thing is to ask questions. So in this workshop, we didn't see a lot of numbers. We didn't see a lot of statistics, because we've seen that. We've seen all those things, especially if these things concern you, which I think so because you're here. We've seen all those things. We've seen the documentaries. We keep learning about all the science. But maybe sometimes it just feels like it's out of our reach. It's someone else's responsibility. Like we want that, but we don't know where to start. And those things have to change. Politics needs to change. The industry needs to change. We do have to have like a macro, like a big change. But us, we can't just stop and watch and hope for the best. We have to take actions into our individual lives, not just to change the world, but also to find meaning. So maybe once in your life, you've had this so-called existential crisis. Maybe you had one of those. Maybe you had several. Sometimes we get those when we are like 40 or 50, but you may have had those when you were 15 and you didn't know, like, what's the meaning of life? What am I doing here? All these questions that we ask ourselves when we're alone. So maybe if you have these questions and you are feeling lost, what I would tell you, because it worked for me, is finding meaning through this, trying to make your actions, your everyday actions, have a positive impact. And by doing that, I mean, you can't be perfect, but by doing that, you're going to find a new meaning in your life, and you won't be complaining and angry all the time as I was. Maybe you will start to see actual changes. For example, I've been doing this, trying this for 7 years. So a little bit less, like 6 years and a half. So I've seen this in a this impact in my life. It changed my life. Like I feel better, I feel happier, I'm healthier, of course, but I also see impact in my community, in my family. My mom is doing the same thing, my sister is doing the same thing, my dad, my boyfriend's family is doing the same things, like my friends are doing the same things, not because I told them, but because they saw that I was actually feeling better about it, that I was feeling kind of like lighter, if that makes sense. Like I wasn't feeling as angry or as frustrated, but I was actually finding meaning. And then, because maybe you've seen this before, when you start to change your perspective, things started coming into my life, and I started meeting these new people, and I started realizing all these new things that if I was still stuck into this angry, complaining, sad, frustrated, scared phase of my life, maybe I wouldn't have seen all of these things. Maybe I wouldn't be talking to you right now. And I've met so many great people that give me hope, even in my darkest moments. So that's what I wanted to tell you. Like, start today, start questioning today, even the small things or the big things. What can I do today in my house? It's not just about blaming others, like, it's my government's fault, or it's the industry's fault, or whatever. Yeah, they have some of the fault, of course. But what can I do? What can I do? So remember, ask why, what, how, and where you eat, shop, dress, consume, move, does, acts, and transforms. So, for example, this one is a very easy step, right? This is what we see on social media. Stop thinking in a disposable manner and start thinking in a reusable manner, like from disposable to reusable. Like, maybe you will have to make some investments at first. Maybe there's things you already have at your home. And these are not new ideas. These are things that other generations were already doing. We, in a sick consumerism generation, think that we always need new things, that we always need to have one-use items to simplify our lives. That was the idea of single-use items, simplify our lives. But one thing that we learn in philosophy is that immediate solutions, apparent immediate solutions, have very bad outcomes in the long run. So saying, I'm gonna create these plastic bottles because people don't want to have this whatever problems in their lives, and just by creating the disposable product, I'm simplifying their life. Like, those immediate solutions, we are now facing the consequences. In the case of disposable products, for example, with plastic and all of that, those things started in the 50s, 1950s. And the idea was good, like, give more time to do other things. You don't have to maybe clean so much, wash your dishes, because we have all these disposable ones, like, trying to simplify life in a positive way. But now, and it's not even a generation later, we're facing the consequences. Quick solutions without thinking profoundly in the root of the problems only leads to that. So, okay, the first thing would be to change your lifestyle from a disposable one to a reusable one. It's a process. We all have a different life, and we can't do all at the same time. But maybe, stop getting bottled water if you can, and try to get a filter if you can, and maybe bring your cup, and maybe bring your bag, and maybe bring your container. All of these things that we already know, that we probably already seen. Maybe some of you are already doing it, and maybe sometimes you feel like, well, I am already doing it, but it seems so small. Like, I feel like I'm not doing enough. But it is a lot. Just by doing this, you're doing a lot. And it doesn't seem maybe sometimes like a lot because it's not hard. So we are used to thinking that for us to have a really big change, it has to be very difficult. Not really. Maybe this is super easy to you, bringing your containers, changing all of your things into reusable ones. Maybe that's easy. Great. If it's easy, it doesn't mean it's not creating a big impact. So that, for example, I drink a lot of tea, so I buy my tea in bulk, and instead of buying the little packages of tea, I just buy my tea in bulk, and I invested in good materials for my kitchen because I like to cook a lot instead of buying, really cheap ones that I have to keep on changing because I had the opportunity to buy these materials. I stopped using, because I can, I mean, of course, only if you can. I stopped using disposable menstrual products and changed to a cup that lasts, the one that I bought 12 years. So that's like a super big impact. As a philosopher, I was buying a lot of books. So I was able to buy a Kindle that made me have all of these books that I maybe didn't really want to have physically into this Kindle. But if you don't read a lot, you don't need one. Like, you have to think in your individual lifestyle, what things can you change? What are you able to change? And those things that you can change them from a disposable to reusable one. Start in your bathroom, that's the easiest part. And then we're going to start with the harder part. And maybe with you, it won't be as hard because I know that all of you are interested in the climate crisis. But when I give these workshops to other people, they like jump, like they start moving and they get super uncomfortable with this subject. But an eco warrior needs to question what they eat. And we have to eat more plants and less animals. From an ethical perspective, remember, not just a sustainability perspective, I have to add the ethics part. From an ethical perspective and from an environmental perspective, and also a health perspective. So I'm not saying go vegan tomorrow because no, I don't want to impose anything. And maybe you can't, maybe you don't want to, or maybe you're not sure how, but just try, at least at the beginning, more plants, less animals. That's something that we all can do. If you want to go vegetarian, if you want to go vegan, go for it. But if you don't or you can't, just use that, like more plants, less animals. Remember, from an ethical perspective, because their lives don't belong to us, that's something we have to stop thinking, because it has an environmental impact, a negative impact, and because it's not actually good for our health. So for each day that you live a plant-based diet, just for one day, you save the water equivalent of 3 months of bathing. So 3 months of more like taking a shower, you save it by eating more plants. So if you're worried about water and you're putting like a bucket in your shower because you want to use that water, that's perfect. Do you want to do even more? Check your diet. Save the CO2 that an average car emits for 12 days. So if you're like, okay, Jimena, but where I live, I really have to use my car to move around, and I know that is not very good and that it pollutes. What can I do? Again, check your diet. It's even a greater impact. So we can avoid the deforestation of 5 square meters of jungle or tropical forest. You know what happened? I think it was 2 years ago or a year ago in the Amazon. It was all linked to animal agriculture. Reduce greenhouse gases by 12%, and of course, save the life of an animal, which I think that deep down, we all care about that. We all care about the well-being of others. If we don't, we may have a problem, we have a pathology or something. But if we do, we care about them. If you saw me kicking a dog in the street, you would react. You wouldn't want me to, kick a dog in the street, right? So that actually makes me, for example, for me, that's what makes me feel good. And some people think that eating more plants and less animals is very restrictive and very difficult. And no, for me, it's very empowering because something as easy as that has such a positive impact. So if you can change your diet, think of this. Maybe you don't drive your car as much. Maybe you don't buy new things. Maybe you don't create a lot of trash, but you do eat. And we all eat. And I'm thinking that most of us here have enough privilege to eat several times a day. So each time that you're sitting and eating or drinking, you have to make a choice, and you can make a choice. And for me, instead of seeing that in a negative way or a restrictive way, it's so powerful. And I feel like so happy for just with what I eat, how much I can be doing for others and for myself. But it's not just what we eat, but how to eat and where to buy things. Like consume locally. Not just, I mean, if you're vegan and you keep on buying products made somewhere else that they have to ship, I mean, yes, you're vegan, but you're also creating a negative impact by that. So consume locally as much as you can. Consume seasonally as well, as much as you can. Cook whenever you can. Right now that we are stuck at home, maybe you're doing this more, but cook whenever you can because you are aware of what you're using, what you're wasting, and how to maybe, composting. It's different when you do it yourself. Grow your own food if you can. If you can grow your own food, this is one of the most revolutionary acts, in my opinion, that we can do. Growing your own food. Do you remember maybe if you work the first time that you earned your money, when you bought something that you actually earned that money, and you bought something? Imagine that feeling, but times 1,000 by growing your own food. Even if it's just, lettuce. If you only have space to grow lettuce, that lettuce needed your help and your love and your care and a lot of things that actually open your mind into being very conscious about where your food comes from. I started my garden in my house. Give me a sec, please. I started my garden in my house, and I am very, very aware of how long it takes for my food to grow. And I never want to waste it because I know everything that goes into growing one leaf of things. So also, does not waste or promote food loss. Try to use everything that you have. Don't waste. Stop this idea of wasting or having, like, for example, here in Mexico, we have this idea that if your fridge is full, like if you have a super full fridge, you're doing great. And if your cupboard is full, you're doing great. We have this idea in Mexico. But for me, when I see a super full fridge or a super full cupboard, for me, it means waste because there's no way you're going to finish that. You are going to waste something. And we've all had this problem in our fridge where we start making piles and the things that stay in the back, they go into this abyss that we never see again. And then like 5 months later, we see them and they expired so long ago, we don't even know how to throw them anymore. So buy what you need, see everything that you have, don't promote waste or food loss. And food loss is different because food loss is actually when you go and buy it. Example, if you see bananas and they're not, I don't know how you call them in English, but they're not connected, like all of the bananas, and you see a lonely banana, buy that banana because probably no one will buy it and it will get thrown. Buy that. Or if your product doesn't look as beautiful, it's still as nutritious, buy it. Don't waste it. Try, if you can, if you have the possibility, to meal prep, to avoid waste and save time, meal prep. Support ethical places. Like if you can, stop buying things from chains and the restaurants that are not doing anything for the environment or the animals or your health. And compost the excess. If you can't have a compost in your house, they may be in your area composting services or projects. For example, here in Mexico, we have services that they can go to your house and they give you a bucket and you fill it with your organic material waste, and they take it and they compost it, and the next time that they go for the bucket again, they actually give you the soil for you to use if you want. So there are solutions everywhere. So can we keep the questions to this area a little bit at the end? Is that okay with you? Yeah? No? Okay. Okay.
Yes, okay.
Okay, thank you. So, because since English is not like my first language, as you can obviously tell, I have like this, like thread in my mind that if it gets stopped, like, gets confused. I don't know if it happens to all of my bilingual and trilingual fellow friends here, but it's something that happens to my mind that I'm thinking in English so I can speak in English as fast as I can. But if it gets like cut, like my mind starts thinking in Spanish again. So I have to like reset the whole thing. Okay, so moving that. So how to shop? Always applying circular philosophy. This idea of asking questions, where it comes from, who made them, where it's made from, what am I going to do with this when I don't use it anymore? Those questions. With zero waste practices and closed loop practices, with sustainability and regeneration and through environmental ethics. Buy and consume local, not just your food, but everything that you can. Buy secondhand items, everything that you can. Stop thinking that secondhand items are not good enough or they're dirty or whatever. We have to stop thinking like that. The most environmentally friendly things are the ones that already exist. Invest and not spend. Not spend money, or this idea that I'm spending a lot of money in these environmental products, but think about them as investments. If you can buy like a filter for your water, maybe it's going to be more expensive than buying water bottles at the beginning, but it's an investment for your money, for the planet, for your health. It's an investment. And also, buy things that will last you a long, long time instead of things that will last you very, very little amount of time just because they're cheaper. If you have the possibility, invest. Apply the 30-day rule. I don't know about um, how you are. Maybe you don't consume as much. Maybe you're not shopping as much. But if you feel tempted, Black Friday or Amazon Prime Day or all of these things that are happening now, if you feel tempted and you ask yourself this question, is it something that I need or is it something that I want? And wait 30 days. And if in 30 days you still want that item, buy it. I mean, it's fine. You don't have to live completely out of things. But most of the time, after 30 days, you won't even remember what that was. Because maybe you were just trying to buy it, or were just thinking about buying something because you were bored, or because you were sad, or because you saw a sale, or because of whatever. So by applying that 30-day rule, which sounds like a lot, but a month goes by like this, you will actually reduce a lot of the things that you buy. You will be applying one of the R's of the zero waste. And shop in moderation. I never go because I have the opportunity to go to these small markets, and I never go to big markets when they try to sell me like the biggest products because they and think that those are like super good sales for me. Like, I buy just what I need. The idea of what I told you about the fridge feeling full, what I actually did is I have a very small fridge. It's kind of like super small fridge, because I only fill it with what I'm going to eat. The 30-day wait is a good idea. Yeah, I started this because of my boyfriend. He was very tempted with Amazon. So I told him, wait, maybe it's just an impulse. And sometimes he actually really, really does want that. And he waits for the 30 days and he remembers it. Why I waited? I am going to use it, okay. But maybe 30 days go by and I don't say anything and he doesn't remember. So yeah, in moderation, stop participating in wasteful practices and in sick consumerism. How to dress. Also, I like the philosophy. Thank you. How to dress. Don't buy fast fashion. If you can, which I think most of the time you can, don't buy fast fashion. You can buy locally. For example, here in Mexico, we have clothes made from Mexican people that are so beautiful, and no one buys them anymore. I don't know why. They're so beautiful and they're ethically made and with good materials. Don't buy fast fashion. Buy secondhand. It's cheaper, it's better. Remember, the most environmentally friendly things are the ones that already exist. Most of the things that my new clothes are secondhand. And at first I was like, maybe it's going to be dirty, maybe it's not going to be pretty, but not really. I've actually found amazing things by buying secondhand or doing like swaps with your friends. That's also a good idea. Fix your clothes. Like if something breaks, fix them. And mending is in, says Yara. Of course, like my generation, like I didn't know how to sew, like I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to mend my things. And I think that's super sad. That's something that we have lost. And we should all know how to do that. Where can you buy secondhand in Mexico City? Oh, Anna, that's going to be in your guide. Don't worry. There's a lot of places where you can buy secondhand in Mexico City. Actually, the other day I was with my sister and I was actually feeling overwhelmed because I was seeing on Instagram so many clothes, secondhand clothes that I wanted to buy. But then I realized I'm just like feel like just for impulse, because I was so excited to see all of these new secondhand projects. I was like so excited. Um, Fix your clothes, fix your things, learn how to do them. It's something that we should all learn how to do. When you are going to buy new things, buy ethical materials and practices, durable materials. And don't care about repeating. You probably don't care, but some people are really, really scared about using the same outfits over and over and over. Like, for example, when I give these presentations in person, which has been a while, I have like 3 outfits that I wear, and those are like it. So maybe if you've seen videos of me giving this presentation before, you think it's the same one because I have the same clothes, but it's just because that worked and we keep on using that, right? And take care of what you already have, not because things are important, like not trying to go into a materialistic thing, but because we have to prolongate, we have to make their lifespan larger, like expand their lifespan. Take care of the things that you have by properly washing them, by mending them, by fixing them, all of those things to avoid buying new things. And why is fast fashion so bad for the environment? So today we buy 4,000. How do you say that number? 4,000, 400, 4,000, 400 more clothes than 2 decades ago. 20% of industrial water pollution comes from the treatment and dyeing of textiles. So we don't have water. We don't have clean water. 400. Thank you. We don't have water. We don't have clean water, and we're using it for clothes. Doesn't make sense. So much that it takes 700, right, gallons of water to make enough cotton for 1 t-shirt. And for a pair of jeans, it's double that amount, just for a pair of jeans. That's why it's the second cause of water pollution. It creates 2 trillion carbon emissions annually. Fast fashion is poorly and unethically made, in poorly unethical conditions. The people that make your clothes are living in practically the worst conditions that you can imagine. Sometimes they're not even paid. They work all day. The materials that they use are meant to be trashed. Like if you buy from a fast fashion store and you like a shirt and then you wash it, after 4 washes, it's not going to be like the quality that you had when you first bought it. So that's the idea, so that you go and buy another one. So it's made to be thrown away. And also buying a lot of clothes, buying a lot of items for you to dress feeds sick consumerism. And that's what we want to avoid. How to consume in general. Valuable information and entertainment. I'm not saying that all of your free time should be spent watching documentaries or information. I mean, we all need sometimes trash TV or, clear our mind and see something. We all need that, but be very aware and conscious that everything that we do, everything that we buy, or everything that we see is a boat. As important as that. Not just what we buy with our money, like the items that we buy, but what we decide to see is also a boat of what is going to be kept on, what is going to be kept on producing, like what, for example, what Netflix sees that you're seeing, oh, we're going to keep on making that entertainment. We're going to keep on doing those things because you are watching it. So be very mindful about what you see, what you buy, because you are telling companies that's what you have to keep on creating. Support those who do something for others. So I always use this example. The other day, someone showed me how many followers on Instagram the Kardashians had. And I was so surprised that they had so many followers for doing nothing. Like they do nothing. Nothing important, at least. They do nothing important and they have so many followers. So what would happen if we translated, like if we shifted all of those followers to people that were actually trying to do something for others, right? And start from your community. Like if you have a neighbor, if you have a friend, one of your classmates, one of your coworkers that you know is doing something, that is trying to do something, a project or an idea or something like that, support them. Support locally and support people who are doing things for others, not people that are just trying to sell or trying to sell you their lifestyle, because that adds zero meaning to you and to the planet. And they just teach others to consume, says Yara. Exactly. Like, you don't need that. It's trash for your brain as well. And do not consume single-use materials. So right now, there's a lot of criticism to plastic, the plastic pollution, but plastic is not the only problem. For example, here in Mexico, we're seeing more and more stores where you can buy in bulk, but they don't encourage you to bring your own container. They give you paper bags. So if we stop using plastic, and all of the plastic that we use, single-use plastic that we use, we shift it into paper, then we're going to see paper demand that we haven't seen before, and we're going to need more wood, and we're going to deforestate even more. So that's no idea. And the same with, for example, with cotton. If you buy new reusable bags every time you want to buy, just because it's not plastic, well, that's other problem. The root problem is single-use materials. The idea that we can take something and throw it immediately. That's what we have to stop, the throwing society, the throwing away idea. Instead, use what you have and use materials that you can continue to use over and over again, when possible. Sometimes maybe you won't be able to. And then how to move. This one is obvious. Walk as much as you can, bike or use your skates or something like that. Use public transport. That changes wherever you live. For example, here in Mexico, we don't have trains, but if you do have trains where you live, it's better to use a train, to use every method of public transportation, land method. Carpooling, I mean, maybe not so much right now with the pandemic. Car, cruise, and plane. So the cruises and planes have a huge environmental impact. And I would say cruises, I mean, avoid them. You're not missing out on anything, and they pollute so much. For example, the cruises that come to Mexico City, they throw all of the trash that they created on the cruise, they throw it in Mexico City. But in Mexico, not Mexico City, in one of Mexican beaches. They throw all of the trash created throughout the cruise, they throw it here. And sometimes that happens, they throw it into these beaches. It's just not necessarily all around our coasts. Exactly, they're throwing all around the coasts. And if the government is maybe greedy enough, like what happens here, is they'll be okay with the cruise company throwing their trash because they give them money. So don't support that. And plane, I know, I mean, not right now, but we all like to travel, and travel is fantastic. Or maybe you have to travel, but be mindful about it and maybe mitigate, that's a word, like balance the negative impact of flying by doing other things like what you're using, like your clothes, and what you're eating, which are things that you do every single day. I don't think you're using a plane every single day. And how to act. How does an eco-warrior act? You separate the waste that you did not avoid, separate it as well as you can, that you couldn't avoid, that you couldn't reuse, that you couldn't refuse, and recycle it. Compost and return to the soil. Inspire and guide others. Vote, literally go and vote for things that make sense with this, but also understand, like I said before, that everything that you buy and everything that you consume is a vote. Advocate. So this was something that someone of you was saying. When you start this, you will get criticism at first. But that's like one of the main challenges as an eco-warrior, having the answers and advocating for the movement. Again, for example, with veganism, the hardest part about being vegan is not what you eat, is the criticism that you're going to get. So if you can move past that, everything will be fine. You have to advocate because you're going like towards the flow, like you're pushing and you're breaking walls and you're trying to do things differently, and there's always going to be confrontation from that. Transform. So there's this thing in philosophy, like I was saying before, like the threats of our society. So if you all like pull in the same direction, we're transforming
our world. And also there's these things called the bubbles of reality. So for example, me, Jimena, I already have this bubble in my house of all the things that I'm doing. And this bubble, my neighbors are doing the same thing. And maybe there's going to be a moment where there's so many of these bubbles doing the same things that they connect. And that's how culture changes. Culture doesn't change by someone saying, okay, tomorrow we're going to be like this, starting from tomorrow. It's something that we as individuals, through our actions, change our perspectives, and then culture starts to move and shift. Take care of yourself. That's super important. A lot of times when you're an activist or you're advocating for a movement, you forget about yourself. You think the movement is greater than yourself. But the thing is that if you don't care about yourself, your health and your mental health, you're not going to inspire others. Imagine if I was here and I was sick and I was coughing and I looked horrible and I was like angry, you wouldn't be inspired to try to listen to what I'm telling you or trying to do some of the things that I do because I look terrible. So take care of yourself. Your health and your mental health come first before you can act, because no one will listen if you're not okay. And protect your direct surroundings. Start in your house, your community, maybe your neighbors, your city, and then maybe your country, and so on and so on. And then what can you do today after we finish this, which we're almost about to finish? What can I do today in my house after this? Go and review your home spaces. Go and check your fridge, your cupboard, your closet, your bathroom, your cleaning area, and if you have a sunny space. Check your fridge and your cupboard and ask yourself, where is this food coming from? Is it wrapped in plastic? Is it wrapped in single-use items? Is it full of animal products? Is it full of chemicals? Is it full of, I don't know, all of my food comes from other country? All of those questions that you have to ask yourself. Is it expired? Am I buying too much? See, because we are like, when we see things, it's easier for us to act. So see physically your fridge and your cupboard and start thinking, how would your fridge and cupboard look like if it was like an environmentally friendly fridge and cupboard? For example, mine looks with just the amount of things that I need in reusable containers with as much as natural ingredients as I possibly can get, locally sourced as much as I possibly can manage, that's how it looks. Thank you. This is really important. Thank you. Yeah, that's one way to start. That's actually how I realized these things. I went into my fridge and it didn't resonate to all of these things that I was believing, right? Check your cupboard as well, same idea. Check your closet. Do you use all of the clothes that you're wearing? Do you only use, like in my case, like 5 of the same shirts and 2 of the same pants? Like, be mindful of what clothes are you wearing. Okay, so I use this a lot. These are the materials that have lasted me longer, so that when you do have to buy new things, you know you use. And when you don't use, donate it, sell it to continue this circular economy. Check your closet and check who made your clothes if you can. Like maybe it was a fast fashion company, like maybe all of your closet is full of Forever 21 or something like that. Well, next time you have to buy things, maybe you'll do it differently. Check your bathroom. So in your bathroom, do you have 20 different products, 20 different creams, 20 different things that you think or they tell you that you need? Could you simplify your bathroom routine? Could you buy less? Could you buy better? Could you even make your own products? I've been doing my own toothpaste and deodorant for the past almost 6 years. And no, my teeth are fine. And no, I don't smell funny. Everything's fine. Check your cleaning space. Maybe you have like 10 different products that they tell you that you have to buy for each different area of your home. And you can also simplify these and check the ingredients. All of these things are going through the drain. You are polluting the water with these cleaning ingredients, cleaning products. What are they made from? How can I buy better products. Can I make some myself? Maybe there are companies where you live that I can refill your bottles, and they're, I don't know, biodegradable ingredients and things like that. And check a sunny space. If you have a sunny space where you live, you can grow something. Check how sunny it is. In your guide, you will have like a chart that if you have 3 hours of sunlight, 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, and more of sunlight, that changes where you can grow things. If you have no sunlight or you're in winter and you want to grow things, you can buy like these lamps, or you can wait and do it later. But if you can grow your food, it's very rewarding. Also, when you're doing this, remember that there's a balance. Do not make excuses. Like an eco warrior does not make excuses. Like, no, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough space. But also understand your situation. You may not have the same amount of money or space or money or whatever as someone else. Like, understand your specific situation, and with that, act. For example, there was a woman that took my course about a year ago, and she told me that the government subsidized that, like they gave her money to buy diapers for her 3 babies, and she was a single mom. So she told me, for me, it's very difficult to change this help into buying reusable diapers. So in her case, she needed that support. She needed that government support. It was helping her, and that gave her time to do other things and teach her children other things. So understand your situation. You can't do everything. But also in Mexico, there's one thing called la ley del mínimo esfuerzo, which translates doing the very least. That's something that we say here. Don't fall into that. Like, I already use a reusable cup, or maybe how do you say popote in English? I forgot the name. Someone here might.
A straw.
Straw, exactly. Maybe I don't use straws anymore. I use a reusable straw, and that's like, I give myself a pat in the back, and I feel super well because I'm not using these straws anymore. Great, but what else? I mean, I'm sure you can do way more than just the straw, right? Like one time, why do we still need straws in the first place? Exactly, that's the questioning part. But if you feel like you must have them, okay. Like one time there was this girl that sent me a photo through social media. She was like, look, you should be so proud of me. And she was like, she bought a Starbucks and in a plastic cup, the one that even has like a little head to add the whipped cream. And she was using her reusable straw. And she told me, you should be so proud of me. And I was proud because it was like, a step. But I was like, okay, but what about, where are you buying? Like, what about the plastic container? What about plastic dome? What about even like buying in Starbucks? What about all of these things? That I'm not saying that I lectured her into that's not enough. Of course not. But I encourage her, okay, next time you go, bring your straw, and what else can you do? And maybe next time, what else can you do? And so on and so on and so on. Do not apply this trying the least thing. But also understand that it's a process and that we all live it differently. Maybe you're inspired today and you're like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to be vegan. I'm going to start my garden. I'm going to start composting. I'm going to be zero waste. I mean, if you have the energy, go ahead. But most of us, we can't just completely change one day to the other. It's a process. Maybe you want to start with your food. Maybe you want to start with your waste. Maybe you want to start with your clothes. Start maybe small and then gradually build on that. Like, you decide your process. But always keeping in mind that maybe each time you can do a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. For example, even though I've been doing this for 6 years, I still each year make a list of all of the things that I know I can improve. I can do better because I mastered these things. Okay, what's next? And I like those challenges. They give meaning to my life. Lourdes says, small changes make great impact. Yes, small changes make great impact, and we can build upon them. but not apply this ley de mínimo esfuerzo, like doing the least and thinking that's enough, can do more each time. Lead by example. If you lead by your example and you seem happy and you seem motivated, people will eventually follow. Maybe some will take longer than others, but they will eventually follow. If you try to lecture them or judge them or criticize them, it would only create a wall between you and you won't be achieving anything. So don't judge, but also don't say like, oh, well, I'm not going to even try to lead with my example. Try to lead with your example. Say, hey, like I do it this way. Maybe you can try it, like with my family, like, hey, I made this toothpaste. Maybe you want to try it. Maybe it can work for you. Why don't you give it a try? They try it. Oh, you know what? It's not that bad. Things like that. The next one is pessimism. Like, don't go into this pessimism area of the environmental group that's like what I said before, like humans are the virus, we're doing the worst, we're horrible, we're gonna die anyway, so who cares, all of these negative thoughts. Like, don't go into that because it's very dark and it will paralyze you and you will do nothing. But also don't go into the complete opposite of complete optimism of someone else will fix it. Everything in the end will be okay because someone else will fix it. Who is someone else? Maybe it's you. So don't, find a balance. Like, don't be super negative, but don't be super positive. Like, take action. We are dependent on the situation, which is repeated by others. We always follow them. I agree. So in philosophy, there's a philosopher that maybe you have heard that I really, really like, called Immanuel Kant. Kant, he's very famous. Maybe you've seen it in school. And he has this idea that when I saw it in class, it resonated with me, and it made so much sense to my search for meaning in life. Like, if I could even get it tattooed, I would. So it says, live your life as though your every act were to become a universal law. So when you feel like you're the only one, which you're not, but if you feel like you're the only one doing things, remember this. So if everyone composted like I compost, like because I composted, everyone immediately, like from magic, composted, would it be something positive? Yes, then keep on doing it. No, then don't do it. It's as simple as that sometimes. If everyone tried to live in a not wasteful way, would it be something positive? Yes, then do it. Would it be something negative? Then don't do it. As easy as that. Sometimes I have to remind myself these things. Like, maybe I give myself the excuse. Sometimes I've had these situations where, you know what, I'm doing so much, I can give myself the permission to do these things. But then, like, the other side of me goes like, what if everyone thought that way? Would it be something positive? No, then don't think that way. Come on, you can do better. So I tell myself like this battle in my mind. I'm like, yeah, I know I can do better. So I don't do that. And then, like I said at the beginning, eventually everything connects. Your decisions, the people that you meet, the things that you do, the things that you learn, everything, your life connects to the life of others and others connect to yours. Eventually everything connects. Maybe you have seen these once in your life. Maybe you have the feeling that this could be right. Maybe you have experienced it. But what I wanted to share with you through almost these 3 hours, we've been talking for 2 hours and a half, is this. Eventually what you do has meaning. Eventually what you do, what you say, who you meet, connects in your life or connects to the lives of others. Be meaningful about them. Be empowered by these. So remember that I wanted to study cinema, and my sister studies theater. So if this was a story, if life was a story and you were a character, what are the stories that we're going to tell? What are the stories that we want to write? And what role are you going to play in that story? Are you going to be one of the main characters that pushes the story forward? Or are you just going to be someone that stood by the sidelines doing nothing, trying to think everything was going to be okay in the end, or not really caring? What are you going to do? Every day when we wake up, we tell a story to ourselves. The way we act, the way we talk, the way we dress, what we like, what we consume. that we can use as an empowering tool to tell a new story, starting today, starting tomorrow morning. What story am I going to tell? What role am I'm going to play in this new story that we're going to create? Realizing that eventually what I do will have an impact. So thank you. If you have any questions, now is the moment. If you want to receive your certification and the guide that I was talking about to become an eco warrior and keep on this community and stay in touch, please email us at hola at zerowaste.mx or in our social media that it's at I didn't write, I'm going to start writing it in the chat. How do we do it to everyone? Here it is. So our social media is here. It's in Spanish, but you can keep in touch that way or through our website. And yeah, if you want to receive your guide, you want to become an eco warrior, feel inspired, please tell me if you have any questions. Now's the time. Or if you want some to talk with me later, you can send me an email and we can discuss whatever you want. So yeah, thank you so much for listening to me for 2 hours and a half on a Sunday.
Thank you so much, Jimena. This has been amazing. All the tips you have given, I think, have given us a really clear pathway of different things we can do to change our lifestyle. So I think everyone here will benefit greatly from this session. So we have about 20 minutes to go over questions or comments. I see we already have one participant with their hand up. So if you want, Jimena, I can help you with the moderation of the questions and send them over to you. Okay. So we have our first participant, Yotiranjan. If you can turn on your mic, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. So I had my question to her. I mean, Zemama. So did I pronounce it correct, Zimena?
See, yeah.
Yes. So what I wanted to ask is, I was just okay with whatever I heard. I was so much glad to know one more perspective. You know what? In this festival, I just got to know that more and more perspectives, and that's what I like. So one word which was very new to me was a meal prep that you talked about. I mean, I
Yeah.
never heard about it. I thought it was a short form, but it wasn't. You just completed in a term, and I think I was startled here. What does that mean even to me?
Meal prep. So meal
Yes.
prepping is like preparing some ingredients or even complete foods for you to eat. So if you're very busy, for example, and you don't have enough time to cook, you can take some time in your maybe on Saturday or on Sunday, you can take like an hour and cut all of your vegetables and create all of the sauces, or maybe prepare some rice, things that you can do in advance to make it easier for you in the week to eat at home, and so that you don't have to feel the need to ask for food delivered to your house or to go somewhere to eat. Maybe you already have these things prepared that would make your life easier. That's meal prepping.
Okay. Okay. And I think that's the thing I do. I don't do that much because I mean everything is handy. Being a vegetarian and such vegetarian, um, who just don't like the sight of meat, I should
Mhm.
say. From
Mhm.
my childhood, I don't just like. I just don't like anything which is non-veg. So that's what happens, and actually, it helps a lot, being cutting. I mean, in a perspective of humanity, also, it feels so dreadful to see an animal being just done
Yeah.
anything. I mean, just killing an animal, which is a part of a wildlife and all.
Yeah, because that's where it connects to environmental ethics. Like they don't belong to us; they're
Yes,
here with us, which is different. But
and
yeah,
talking
if
about
you
the
don't
health,
have to
yes.
need to meal prep, don't do it. I'm just saying, like, if you are
Hmm.
constantly tempted to buy food or have it delivered to your house because you feel like you don't have time to cook, maybe that's one way that can help you. It has helped me to eat more at home and reduce my waste just by, cutting up some vegetables in the beginning of the week and things like that.
Yeah, and and the thing you talked about the hierarchy, I totally agreed with that because in many societies, including mine, oh my God, this hierarchy is so much powerful. They don't even see anything else. The
Mhm,
men's at the top, very dominant, and
mhm.
the animals at their lowest. Thank God, there are some odds and exceptions about it, but
Mhm.
even after that, this hierarchy is very much strong. I think we children also come in the second category. Men are at the first, which we can't even ask. The question that you told that eco boy always asks. The
Mhm.
eco always, whenever ask, he's get scolded or he's being shut up like a shutter.
Yeah, I know. It depends on where you live. Maybe this is even more evident than in other places. But the idea is to make it conscious and constantly fight to end this way of thinking, which is not easy. But that's why it depends on a lot of us doing the same work. You're not alone. That's the idea of the equal warriors. Like, even if you're maybe you feel like you're alone, like knowing that other people thinking the same way as you, like trying to do their best. Someone is
Thank
saying
you.
things in
Oh,
the chat.
yeah, we have Yara who has raised her hand, and
Mhm.
we also have something in the chat. But if you want, we can go
Hi there.
to Yara
Sorry
first.
that I have these light source behind me, so I look like I'm in the witness program. But first of all, oh my God, I never wake up at 6 in the morning. I just did it for you, Jimena. But
Thank you.
anyway, so my question is, it's just frustrating because when you go to, especially the farmer market, why do we have all these extra little things like rubber bands? Like I'm gonna show you. This is my 1 year waste of little things, and like these things
Yeah.
that come in the celery. I have this like ball of rubber bands. So it's just these little things that how or where do we need to go? Do we need to go to the Farmers Association, or what do we need to do to avoid these little things?
Thank you. Yes, that's such a good question. So each time that we refuse or we try to refuse an item because we know it's wasteful, we have to say why we're doing it. So in your example, if you go to the farmer's market, tell them like, why do you use this? I don't want it because it's wasteful. Can I give it back to you? So imagine if everyone did that, they would maybe someday realize, you know what, this is not necessary. If you can go even further and write something, an email or on social media or something like that, demanding or asking, why are you doing this? It's not necessary and it's wasteful. That's very important because sometimes people tell me that they feel ashamed to say that they don't want to receive like a wasteful product. Like, for example, here in Mexico, a lot of times when you're in your car and you go into a stoplight and you have your window down, there's a lot of people coming towards you and trying to give you like papers and pamphlets and information, whatever. And as in Mexican culture, we feel like super embarrassed to say, you know what, no, thank you. So we say, okay, yeah, and we take it, even though we know it's wasteful. So when you have those situations, like go ahead and say, you know what, I don't want it because I don't want to create trash. I don't want to be wasteful. This is not necessary. Keep on saying that. And over time, things will change. Also, here in Mexico, we have these like people that sell corn in the streets, and they sell them in these plastic containers. And this was this girl that took the workshop a while back, and she told me that each time she went and bought her corn, she told the man selling them, like, I'm bringing my own container because I don't want to be wasteful because you're selling them in these plastic cups. And a year later, it sounds like a lot, but a year later, that guy had a sign that said, please bring your own containers. We want to help the earth. And he was encouraging his customers, even if it was like super small business, to do the same, because somehow once it resonated with him, what she was kept on telling him. So you can start by doing that, like telling these people, like, can I give you the rubber band back because I don't want it, even if they're going to have it. It's just like giving them to them so they realize that that's not necessary for you as a customer. Or if you want to take it, but say, I hate this, I don't want it, please stop it, send an email, doing all of those things. That's actually one of like also our jobs as eco warriors, like constantly saying why we're doing things or why we're not doing things. We have to say that in a good way, with a smile, not be rude or anything, and then we can see actual change.
But I wanted to go like another level, because
like asking for the companies and such.
Yeah, like because the asparagus, for example,
Mm-hmm.
the farmers, the growers need to know how to sell that product, and so the easiest way for them is to put a rubber band around it. And I can see and so that's the part that is not just that in my farmers market, it's around the world. And so where can you go to make an impact? That's what I was trying to
go as high as you can into asking for that change. Like email whoever you have to email and ask others to do it, sign petitions. Those things actually help. And maybe the company that is creating, or maybe whoever is creating, growing those asparagus and adding these rubber bands, will hire someone like my company or someone that will teach them how to pack their asparagus without the rubber band. In the long run, they are now listening more to us as consumers because a lot of people keep on asking for these changes. So I don't know where you live, but here in Mexico, we've seen this a lot. I mean, Anna can tell you, we've seen these companies that are actually changing. For example, there's a very big brand of menstrual products that they are now selling menstrual underwear. And it wasn't their goal, it wasn't their objective. They were making money out of this, but people were constantly telling them that why was it so wasteful, they could do better, and so on. And now they created that. Like a super big company made that. And the only way we can do them, and maybe it seems like it takes a lot of time, is by pushing companies, pushing the sellers into telling them why we don't need these things and that they should do better. And eventually they have to listen, or we even should stop buying from them.
Thank you so much, Jimena. That was a great explanation. We have time for one more question. So if anyone else wants to ask something to Jimena, you can raise your hand or put it in the chat. We have a great comment here from MLAR. Thank you, Jimena, for your time. There's a lot of blocking and blindness to these terrible problems. I think that every person can always make changes in their lifestyle and customs. So thank you to that participant.
Thank you. That's the idea. Not telling you you should do this, and this, like a set of rules, but actually look into your life in your specific, situation. What can you change? Like be mindful, ask questions, and the rest. I mean, information is there. I really like this example. Maybe it will sound weird for you, but they gave me once an example that's saying, if you're a drug addict, you're going to find drugs and who to get high with wherever you are. If you go on a trip, you're going to find it because that's what you want. So it sounds horrible, but I really like that example. So if you use that into, environmental things, if you want solutions, you will find them. If you really look into them, you will find them. You will find people that are in it with you as well. For example, when I went vegan, I had no idea that there were like 100 restaurants here in Mexico that I could eat at. I was like, what am I going to do? But when I actually did my research, like things started to pop up. Like I saw all of these things that were actually blocked from my mind. Like you're saying, like I couldn't see them, like they were invisible in my field of view because I wasn't resonating in the same way, So when I changed, all of these new things started showing up and I started seeing all of these solutions and meeting all these people. And maybe the same thing will happen to you. You start changing and you start seeing all of these things that will help you in your path.
Thank you so much, Hume. So if anyone else has any other questions, feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat, whatever you prefer. Okay, so if there are no more questions, Jimena, if you would like, you can go ahead and give some closing remarks.
Yes.
Thank you.
So some of you have already sent the email. I'm so happy to see that you're so proactive. Thank you. The first one, in case anyone wants to know, was Susana Delgado. So thank you so much. That was like super fast. If anyone else wants to get their guide, it will take a little bit of maybe like a week, maybe less, because we have to translate it. Some things are just like for Mexico, we have to change it. But please add in your email your full name for your certificate and where you live, because we have to personalize your guide to wherever you're at. So add that in the email, please, like where you live. If you want to add a comment, a recommendation, whatever, you can send it to us in the email, and you can follow us on social media. And yeah, I have we have more courses and we have more workshops. This is just like a very general workshop that what looks for is to inspire you to ask questions and change. And maybe if you've seen other of the conferences here at POP or other things, sometimes the information that we have is so much that we don't know how to filter it, and we don't know if we can actually do something. And we're very, very focused on the scientific aspect, which is super important, of course, but we sometimes forget this philosophical aspect. And I think it's philosophical reasoning what we're really missing out of. And if we all use these tools, this questioning, and trying to have a positive impact and being mindful, we would find answers from all over the world, from all of our different areas, and so on. So yeah, thank you for your emails. I keep seeing them. If you want to say anything else, this is the time. If you want to email us, fine. And thank you so much for being with us, for being with me, listening to me for so long. Sorry if I made some mistakes, but I hope the main ideas were transmitted. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jime. Before we close, I would like to ask everyone who's available to turn on their camera so we can take a group picture.
Yes.
So whoever can, please turn on your cameras. It's nice to see all the faces. Carly, Salma, Susana, Rodrigo. Awesome. Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Perfect, I got it. This was an amazing session, Jimena. I can tell all the participants found it really useful, that all the amazing feedback we're getting on the chat. Everyone is really happy and looking forward to a second part of this workshop. So like you said, even though at first 3 hours seemed like it was going to be a long time, it went by too quickly.
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah,
so my voice.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. And thank you, Jimena, for your time and for all your tips and wisdom.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. Please write.
Bye.
I want to hear from you.